Welcome to the Genuine Life Podcast, where we take time to dive deep into conversations, stories, and teachings to help lead people to multiply genuine life in Christ in Greater Austin and beyond.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another month's episode of the Genuine Life Podcast, where every month we come together to cultivate conversations around what it looks like to live on mission with Jesus. And I'm so excited for this month's conversation to have Scott DeSanders back, our pastor of discipleship, as well as Zach LaCroix, who serves as one of our elders, as well as a life group leader here at Parkway. And today I just want to talk a little bit more about this big vision that we have here at Parkway, that as we continue to think about what it looks like to reach every man, woman, and child here in Greater Austin and beyond with the gospel, we've put language around what our hopes and prayers are for that to look like by the year 2030. And one of the ways that we say that is by the year 2030, we're praying that we would see 300 everyday missionaries, 30 missional life groups, and 3 new church plants. And as we continue to follow Jesus and serve him, we're seeing this happen in our midst. And so you've already heard us talk a little bit about what we mean by everyday missionaries, what we mean by church plants. But today we want to zero in on what we mean by these 30 missional life groups. How do we go about these missional life groups? What does it look like? How do we become a part of it? And what difference does it make as we live, learn, work, and play in the geography that God has placed us in? So Scott, I want to turn it over to you, and let's just talk a little bit about what do we mean by these missional life groups?
Yeah. Well, we have a number of life groups at our church. We have for a long time. Many churches call these community groups or small groups. For us, we call them our life groups. And we have life groups of all different ages and stages of life. And some people group in together based on where they live or coming together for a particular study. And as you've been saying, like we have asked and challenged all of our life groups to be missional, to practice missional life practices as a group. And that's not just an automatic process. It's not built into just because you exist as a life group doesn't make you missional by definition. You've actually got to, it has to be something that you carve out and create as an identity. So just thinking through the fact that like sometimes we've got groups that are meeting together for a specific study or a specific time of life. We've got a group of recent empty nesters or a group that's young adults that are all single. And sometimes the reason they exist is to maybe band together around a time of life, something like that. And so for us to ask every one of those groups, no matter what defines them, to practice being missional is actually a real thing. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad we're talking about it today because it's a challenge, but it's also very life-giving, I think, for a lot of our life group leaders to really put this into practice. So I know, Zach, you've been a life group leader with us for a couple of years. Tell us, when did you guys start that as a group?
Yeah, absolutely. So we just finished our 3rd semester, so we're into our 4th semester, which has flown by. It's been super fun. We multiplied out of another life group that is kind of this early childhood life stage. So most of us are parents with kids under the age of 5, a lot of preschools or kids that are not even yet in school, or even navigating pregnancy or very infancy with our kids. And so what it looks like to, hey, what is it, how do we be faithful in this season where you kind of feel like you're drowning, and that's okay, but hey, we're all in this moment together and we're all figuring it out. What does it look like to be faithful to start to establish some of those rhythms that we want to be true when our kids maybe have more capacity to understand, but we're building those disciplines and we're building those muscles of, okay, so what does it look like to stay really connected with our spouses? And what does it look like to try to, infuse Bible studies or expose our kids to the gospel for the first time? So it's been really rewarding to be in a group that is focused around that life stage. And we benefit so much from having a little bit of that extra programming where we have the opportunity to meet at the church. Ideally, I think we would move into a home just because that's such a different welcoming atmosphere. But for right now, that's our season. We make the best of the season that we're in. And so it's just been really fun and fruitful to navigate it all together.
Yeah. And you and your wife, Jill, co-lead together, and you've got, give me an estimate of about how many couples do you think are with you guys?
again, navigating one of those challenges is kids get sick, right? And
Yeah.
so it can be a rotating cast of times. We have, I think, 10 families on our roster, and we love to present like, hey, there's no blame, no shame. We know life happens. We want you to make a commitment to be here as much as you can, and we take it upon ourselves to be, hey, we're going to be consistent. Like, we're going to meet no matter what. If we have because we do have a large roster, right? We have 20 adults, but hey, if it's only 6 of us, we still think that God would be honored by us meeting, and so we still prioritize that time together.
Yeah. And as you said earlier, I think a lot of this was came from a multiplication, because we've had a lot of families with younger kids coming to Parkway and looking for community in the last few years. And so even this very group was birthed out of that, a bunch of people just looking for more space to be able to meet together. So we're really happy you guys are doing that. And I know from the very start, you guys adopted missional practices very early on. But let's just talk through some of what we're looking for our life groups to put into practice and live out, to be not just any life group, but a missional life group with us. So one, we're encouraging our life group leaders to think through how can I deploy and mobilize as many of our people to be incorporating missional practices into their lives, so that it's not necessarily just a project-based thing. Though some life groups put that into practice. They'll say, let's do a missional activity together, but it goes beyond that. It's not just like an event-based thing. This is something where we want to see everybody in the group individually growing more missional, right? So far, so good. Mm-hmm. And then in some cases, that can be the group can organically do some things together. I think through like a few months ago, the group that my wife and I are connected to did like a Thanksgiving serving type thing together. That was like a missional practice that we did together. And yet any other week in, week out, we still want to be talking about this and growing. We also, when it comes to that individual level, we want the people of our life groups to understand our bless strategy, the stuff that we've talked about in here. Mark, you and I have had full conversations about this, the simple, organic outreach strategy that we lean heavily into as a church. Mm-hmm. Just to quickly review, the BLESS stands for begin with prayer, listen to another person with care, eat together, get over a meal or a coffee, find ways to serve them or allow them to serve you. And then when it's time, share God's story and your story of your testimony. And so we want our life groups to be so familiar with that strategy that it's everyday language for us, that we don't say every 6 months, hey, don't forget to go bless people. And people are like, wait, what does that mean again? Like, it's just natural and familiar. And then another thing we've talked through is something we've brought up and linked on this podcast before is that Bless Every Home, Bless app website. We would encourage our life groups to get many to most to all of their people on that site as a light, and to be active on there. So as an example, I have that Bless website sending me names to pray over right where I live 3 to 5 times a week. Really great. We want to see more of our life groups using that. And then we have asked our life group leaders, can you carve out time as a part of your group meetings to talk about these practices on a regular basis? We've talked in here how important it is to not allow it to slide onto the back burner. And so, statistics, studies show that about a 30-day or more often frequency is what it's going to take to allow missional practice to just be a part of our routine. Any less frequently than that, it slides off the back burner and we tend to forget it. So what we're asking is for our life groups to highlight, spotlight, focus on missional practices around a 30-day or more often cadence. And our groups are starting to really practice that well. I'm really proud of a lot of our groups. And then finally, this is a little bit more kind of a heart thing, more abstract, but we've asked our groups to just consider feeling a burden of ownership for people that are like you or around you as a group. That doesn't mean, the LaCroix small group or life group is the only ones responsible for people like you, but it means that you join alongside other Parkway people or other believers in our area to feel a sense of burden and ownership for people that are lost and don't know Jesus, and to say, that's not someone else's responsibility. I want to feel part of it as my responsibility too. So we're asking our groups to feel like a communal sense of ownership there. And that may be the geography around you, and it might be in the stage of life. And so that's kind of where we are. We've clarified this for a lot of our groups recently, and we've just been trying to reinforce with our group leaders what's it going to look like for you guys as a group to grow more in this direction. And as you said earlier, Mark, we want to see by 2030 that we have at least 30 of these going very strong, that are practicing this regularly. It's not an aspirational thing for them. They've already really started to see these practices in their groups fully.
That's right.
So that's kind of where we're hoping to go, where we are right now, and the path forward that we're on. And it gets me really excited. I think that we are seeing a lot of our groups really embracing this right now.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's some of why I'm excited that you're part of this conversation today, because I know you guys are one of those groups that's been really leaning into this a lot, and not just for the last couple of weeks, but for months now, for a long time, probably since you started, you guys have been practicing a lot of this. So in some of those things I described, I'd love to hear any of those that you have seen like really click with some of your people, or where maybe it's still challenging.
Yeah, I think one of the things that you said there at the end was the idea of it being aspirational. And I think that for a lot of us as life groups, there are 3 parts of being a life group, which is connect relationally, grow spiritually, and live missionally.
Mm-hmm.
And at least in my life groups, 2 of those 3 are very easy and very natural, which I'm so thankful for. And that's the connecting and that's the growing part. But the missional part just sometimes feels a little clunky. And that's, I think aspirational is the perfect word. It's like, yeah, I think we would do that if and that's where, especially, early life or early childhood life stage, it's like, well, yeah, but that's for someone else to do. And it's like, hey, let's take ownership, like you said, of that. What does it look like for us to be real about, hey, yes, I am, sometimes struggling, but also that doesn't excuse me from being on mission. If I believe that, the good news of Jesus and the gospel has changed my life, it's my, honor to get to go out and seek to bless others. And so I think we have tried really to build in some disciplines that are going to help us take our aspirations and make them into actions. And so the beginning of this was, it started, as these conversations sometimes came with an uncomfortable reality check of, hey, let's do the hard thing and go around the room and rate ourselves 1 to 10. What is our missional temperature right now? You personally, again, trying to encourage that ownership of saying, hey, maybe my wife's a 10 and maybe I'm a 2. And I got to be okay with that, because this is not an us thing. It can be an us thing, of course. But really trying to say, hey, individual ownership in terms of having that blessed lifestyle lens. So we did. And it was a really, really positive conversation, because it was so freeing. Even in just the way that we teed it up, you've heard me already say no blame, no shame. And that's one of the things that we want to be really true in our group is, hey, we are not here to make each other feel bad, but we are here to help each other be called up to make our aspirations into actions. And so, yeah, that conversation was so good, because there were a few who were like, I haven't thought about this, and that's not okay. And it was so refreshing to be like, there's something so positive about voicing that and just saying, that's not where I want to be. I have been entrusted with the gospel, and I want to live out the Great Commission. I want to have a blessed lifestyle, but I'm not there right now. And so it's like, okay, awesome. Let's take that reality check and say, what does it look like in the next week or a month to go from a 3 to a 4? And we can celebrate that, and we can rally around you. And that was, I think that was such a great moment that we shared together, that then it made the outflow of what we kind of implemented next really natural. And it was, okay, so we already had this rhythm. We start off our life group just by connecting. Hey, tell us about a high and a low this week. And with young kids, there's almost always a funny story involved of just, my kid said this crazy thing and we laughed and laughed. And then my other kid, did something else that was not negatively crazy, right? And it's like, okay, so we can break down those walls in that way. And then, so we just added high, low, and bless. And so that's our intro. And it's we want to hear about what's going on with you. And then we want to check in. Hey, we know that you had talked to us about this coworker that you wanted to have a conversation. How did that conversation go? And it's just been this really helpful check-in rhythm that, and I would say it's just sometimes goes on the back burner, like you said earlier, Scott. And it's not on purpose and it's not intentional, but it just happens. And so having a weekly rhythm and knowing that there are so many others in my exact life stage who are making this a priority is really empowering to say, I told everybody in front of them what I wanted to do, and I want to go out and do it because I know that it's going to make a difference, and because I know it's going to love and serve those around me. And share the gospel with them ultimately is what we aspire to. So I'm thinking of one really, really cool example of, we had a young lady in our group who spent a lot of those updates just feeling like, I'm really wrestling with what I want to do and how I want to do it. And there's these new neighbors that I have and I want to love and serve them well. And she had kind of identified on her Francis list, like, I really think I have an opportunity with my neighbors, but I'm really trying to be intentional about what I think about. And so we had our break over the winter and we came back and got together last week, and she was like, it came to me and I have started a book club because I wanted to start honest conversations and I wanted to have a fun, easy, entry-level way to connect with my neighbors. And I had, 2 bold asks, I think she said, of just people that were on my Francis list that I wanted to invite, and they said yes. And they're going over Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis, which is a bold book choice, and they said yes. And now she just gets to share all this really positive commentary and conversation that she's been able to have. And she's able to point back to, I don't know if I would have done this if I didn't know that there were other people in the trenches with me, rooting for me and holding me accountable and loving me enough to say, you can do this. We think you can do this. And moreover, we know it's worth it. We know that the God we serve is honored in this and that it's a great opportunity to love and serve those around us. So figuring out what that looks like in our life stage is the creative and fun, challenging part. But I think creating the discipline has been absolutely worthwhile work to invest those 30 minutes on the front end of our time together to get those updates and to know that we're all working on that together.
I think it's awesome that you guys are building this rhythm in every week. What I mentioned earlier is we got to do this at least every 30 days, but for you guys to do this on a weekly basis is only going to increase the chances that it's going to sink into just our instinctive lives. Like, that is so strong an approach to this. And then it also makes it a little less jarring. It's not like, oh, now we got to kind of wrench the gears and talk about the missional thing, because it's just a part of your every week flow. So I'm really impressed and respect how you guys have worked that in so well.
Yeah, and I love just even from that story, you see both the personal and the collective side. The personal of the girl that you shared about, she had to take personal responsibility for the geography that God had placed her in to take that step. But then also collectively as a group, she wasn't doing that in isolation. She had people praying for her, encouraging her, holding her accountable. And so that's the beauty of missional life groups versus just doing it in isolation, is you have the body of Christ surrounding you. Zach, I wonder, maybe you could just comment really quick, because I'm sure there's some people even listening now who maybe say, yeah, okay, I want to live a blessed lifestyle, but I don't necessarily want to be a part of a missional life group. I can do that separately. What encouragement would you give to the person who maybe is just struggling to kind of find time for the group aspect based off of what you've experienced of having a group context to live this out in?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think about this a lot because I think that the group is just a really helpful vehicle of, like you said, Mark, cheerleaders, right? But you don't have to be in a group. You don't have to have a set time every week to have a cheerleader in your life. And so just finding someone to link arms with and say, let's commit to this together. We know that this is what we aspire to, and we want to create a little bit of structure that's going to help us match our intentions with our actions. And so I think that a lot of people can understand and appreciate the ongoing need for accountability just in our Christian walk of just the enemy's always looking to, befall us with different, traps that he lays for us, and having someone to walk through that with has been really helpful in my life, even looking back before I was a part of life groups here at Parkway. Just an accountability partner and deciding together, hey, let's not shy away from taking one blessed step this week or, even every 30 days this month. And so I even think back to COVID. I had one of my cousins that I keep in great touch with. And so we decided to have a monthly call. And it was like, I want to hear what's going on in your life. And I think that something like that, where you have just a little bit of structure that helps further that relationship, that then you can add in a discipline or a habit like taking a blessed step every time you connect.
I love that.
Yeah, I agree. Like, this is not stuff that can only happen in a life group setting, for sure. And so a husband and wife, like in their marriage, can practice this together and find built-in accountability with one another. Like, it's just so good to talk this out and verbalize blessed steps that I want to take and where God's growing me with anybody else. You can do this as a part of a serving team. Like, some of our people involved in compassion ministries are talking about bless and missional practices together. That's not a strictly defined life group, but they're still able to talk about this together in a group. I've seen like some of our studies, like a women's Bible study table group will do this together. So you're right. This can be done any kind of environment where you have other relationships around you that can provide friendly and warm accountability. But then at the same time, we also want our existing life groups to move in this direction. And it's a challenge. Like, it does, at the beginning, it probably feels like this is going to hijack some of our time.
For sure.
Like, we've
And
got,
it does.
yes, it probably feels that way and is in reality that way. But like, it's also the stuff that's most near and dear to Jesus's heart.
100%.
That's worth giving time to. Even when, like, instinctively what I want to connect with other people about is like, how is parenting going? How is marriage for you? Or tell me about your work life. Like, we want to talk about other things, but this is some of the most enriching and deepest stuff that we can focus on. And we're asking to give a portion of time towards that as a group.
And I think that's so important because, at least it's been my experience, that the gravitational pull is always inward rather than outward.
Yes.
It's always exactly like you said about things that matter, of how you're doing personally. How's your marriage? How's life going? How are you deepening spiritually? But then that's the gravitational pull. And so it requires incredible intentionality to think outward, and having a regular rhythm of asking these kinds of questions in community is just so helpful to keep that on the radar. Otherwise, we'll lose sight of it.
Yeah. I've heard it said once that like evangelistic burden evaporates.
Yeah.
It just, it will disappear so quickly if we're not continually reinforcing it and feeding it. So that's why I appreciate how often you guys are doing this. Briefly, what would you say to anybody that's a part of a group where this is not much of a rhythm yet, or there's not any time given to this, of just about how to get going?
I mean, you make time for what you care about. And I think that you guys have done a great job of laying the groundwork and giving us all the tools. And we want to go out and be the body and go out and have that impact that we aspire to. And so, I mean, I just think about how it really takes just one person in a life group to raise their hand and say, hey, what would it look like for us to decide to do this together? And I think that it's always back in the back of our minds as believers, because we know that it's important and we see it over and over in Scripture. And it's just one of those things that there's so many excuses, right? Like, and I only know this because I've used them all, right? Like, it's uncomfortable. I don't want to burn the bridge. I don't want to lose the relationship. And it's like, that is all real. And it is all fair, but it doesn't mean it doesn't matter. And so having someone in a life group who has that opportunity to say, I think that we can commit to this. And I mean, my encouragement and challenge would be try it. Try it every time you meet for a month. And I trust that God's going to show up.
Yeah.
It's going to be really cool to see, because I think that's so early childhood life stage. Where are we? We're in playgrounds, we're in preschools, we're in parks. And just the idea over the course of the first month of what does it look like for me to just have that outward focus, like you talked about, Mark. Like I saw so much growth in even my most reserved people in my group just from having this conversation and bringing it up for 5-10 minutes every time we met. And so I know that the Lord can use something like this, and it's a discipline worth investing a little time in.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I also think it would be an oversight for us to talk about life groups without just acknowledging, for anyone that's listening or watching that is within our reach, that's around the Central Texas area. If you're in the range of Parkway and you're not a part of a life group, we would love to help with that. We would love to connect with you and help you explore if there's a potentially good fit for you as a life group. And if you're not in our range, then find a local church near you where you can take part in community like this, because it's how God has wired you. And we can only go so long isolated and disconnected from community. So that's another key piece, is while we're talking about groups living this out, we want you to have the opportunity to be in a group that has this potential as well.
Yeah, I love this conversation, guys. And I get so excited just thinking about 2030 even right now, as we think about this big vision of 30 missional life groups. And obviously God can do way more than that. But when you think about at least 30 of them living this out on a daily, week in, week out, month in, month out, annual basis, the reach, the impact that can have in reaching people with the gospel, seeing real life transformation happen of people going from death to life in Christ. I just get so excited thinking about that. And Zach, just thank you so much for living that out in the messiness of all that it is, in the context of your missional life group, in the stage of life that you're in. Thank you for leaning into that and being authentic and genuine in living that out. And thanks so much for being a part of this conversation, Scott. Thank you. Yeah. And for all of those of you who are tuning in, just so grateful for you to be a part of this community as we continue to learn what it looks like to, again, be a part of this mission here at Parkway of together leading people to multiply genuine life in Christ. And one of the ways we do that is through the context of these missional life groups. And just like Zach said, just try it. Just take a step, try it in your personal life, try it in the context of your community, and let's see what God's going to do through that for His glory and the expansion of His kingdom. Well, I just want to say thank you again for tuning in to another month's episode of the Genuine Life Podcast, and we'll see you next time.